We're here at Brigham Young's winter home in St. George, Utah. He would come down here in the South starting about 1870 on a regular basis and spend several months, 3 to 5 months of the year here. So this became the secondary headquarters of the church in a way. And he came for a number of reasons. He had some health issues by this point, arthritis, rheumatism. The warmer climate was good for him. But I think there's another factor, which is that he was also wanting to support some of the construction projects here, the St. George Tabernacle, St. George Temple. And he was a builder, remember, as a young man, a glazier and painter, and he was good at that sort of thing. He wanted to be here and make sure these things were done right. He wanted a temple done in his lifetime. I think that's really, really important.
Pardon me, gentlemen.
Oh, my word.
I brought some donuts and syrup to celebrate Brigham's birthday. I'll tell you why after we eat, because we can't bring the treats inside.
Right,
so, shall we?
Lead on. Oh, man.
Johnny, will you crack open that syrup for us? So, this is because Brigham loved donuts. I have this little quote here from his daughter, Clarissa Young Spencer, and it's a memory of her breakfast in the Beehive House with Brigham. Yeah, pours a little dollop there, and we can dip. She says, "To be sure, there was cornmeal, mush, and milk, which was no great treat, but there were also hot donuts and syrup, and the first and finest strawberries or other fruits of the season naturally found their way to Father's table." He loved donuts and syrup for breakfast, so.
What a man.
Breakfast of champions. I'm going for this one. Whoa, look at
Dip
that.
it in syrup. I've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
had a donut.
Me neither.
I mean, I've had like a maple glaze.
You're gonna drip that all over, my friend.
Not sure I can
The church is
handle
true.
this entirely. Oh, yeah.
Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints represent a faith practiced by millions, a faith which has also inspired its share of controversy.
I think if you look at Brigham Young's whole life, well, it's a conundrum.
I'm Camrey Fox, and together with John Wilson and Professor Daniel Peterson, we work to uncover unexpected twists in the character of a man that we thought we already knew.
So I asked you guys to prepare some things that stood out to you about Brigham for his birthday. Things that were touching to you or surprising or just that you think the audience should know. So, do you want to start us off, Dan?
Well, I've been reiterating it through the series, his incredible devotion to Joseph Smith. Again, this is something that I learned because I grew up with the notion that he was the great practical man and all that sort of thing. His devotion to the temple and to the gospel, the practical stuff, he was really good at it. But he was doing it for a reason, to build the kingdom, to build temples, to gather the saints. It wasn't just for the sake of colonizing and digging irrigation canals and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not how you always picture Brigham.
Right.
Mine sort of goes along with that. One of the ones that came to my mind still, it's like one of the very first episodes that we filmed, but the thing that blows my mind is the Lejean Caruth episode, where like the way that things were transcribed were literally not the way that Brigham spoke them. And so it's painted a totally different picture of this man who was fiery and fierce, but also was not as cruel and blunt always as he came across in the transcriptions that we've been reading. They were much more loving a lot of the time, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think something that still resonates with me is when we did winter quarters and the trek across Iowa, which we will see in an upcoming episode. The saints followed him, and the implication was that the people loved him, that they really did love him and look up to him. And they could have stayed behind and said to Brigham, go, follow Joseph, go west, get out of here. But they didn't. They followed him at immeasurable cost. To themselves personally, their family, their children, to follow him because they loved him and they loved the Lord and they believed that he really was.
Well, I liked something that Matt Groves said at one point. I thought it was a small point, but it's really instructive. He said, they called him Brother Brigham. And it wasn't because they were intimidated by him. Quite the opposite. He would travel through the settlements of the saints and he knew people. He would remember them. He knew their names. He knew about their children. He'd ask about that sort of thing. But he cared about them, and they knew it. One of the stories that I heard, and I'm not sure where I heard it first, has to do with the appearance of the St. George Temple, which was dedicated just in April of 1877, and Brigham dies in August of 1877. And it's a project he's really wanted to see done. There had not been a temple since Nauvoo. And so he wants a temple finished. That really matters to him. Sometimes I want the tongue of seven thunders, he says, to wake this people up. If you knew the importance of this work, It would be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the story is told that when the temple was about to be completed, 1876, I think, is the year of the journal entry from his son, Brigham Jr., who says that his dad didn't like the appearance of the temple. There was one thing he didn't like. It was the tower. It was too squat. He thought it should be 10, 15 feet higher at least, maybe 20 feet higher. It's almost finished, and he's worried probably about his health. Will he live to see it completed? So he lets it go. But he let it be known that he was not satisfied with it. He dies in August of 1877, and about 14 months later, so lightning hits the tower. The thing that people noticed at the time is it hit only the tower. Did almost no damage to the rest of the building, but it took out the tower. And so later on, the tower was rebuilt. You can see it now. It's about twice as high as the original tower was, the spire on the temple. And the story began going around, well, he didn't like it, and he got to change it. Now, obviously, we don't know what really happened in that case, but it also illustrates a point that I think is important to understand. I've heard it said he knew everything. He was in control of everything in the territory. But the fact is, he didn't always get his way. He wasn't the autocratic tyrant whose will always prevailed. He didn't just decree, change that. There's one story that I've always been amused by since I first heard it. It was actually told to me, I think, by Hugh Nibley, who said that he had talked at one point when he was quite young with Brigham Young's last surviving daughter. And she told him this story. That Brigham Young had some beautiful saddles. And he said to the children, look, you can put these on a horse and ride the horse. But there's one in particular that's just gorgeous, hand-tooled, just don't touch this one, okay? It's really, really nice, and I don't want it scratched up. Well, one day he's off doing something or in his office doing something, and they get that saddle and try to put it on a horse, and they can't get it on the horse, and it falls off, and they try again, it falls off, and it gets all scratched up. Brigham comes out and sees this. And he's really angry, really angry. I told you not to touch that saddle. Of all the things here, you weren't supposed to touch that one. And he takes it from them and he hangs it back up on the wall and he goes marching off very angry and goes into the house and slams the door. Then goes into his office and slams the door. And as the story was told to me, the little girl follows him into the house and listens at the door, and she can hear him in his office saying, down on your knees, Brigham, down on your knees. He's trying to get control of himself. And I just think that's a very human story.
Yeah, I feel like we've all been there. We've all been there like, oh, I gotta do something before I do something I regret.
I came home to my 3-year-old son, and he had taken a Sharpie and drawn up all the way up the stairwell in the rental that we had. Probably actually didn't handle it as well.
Come on. Get on Brigham's level.
I know. It's so encouraging to have stories of the humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always liked a line from Lorenzo Snow, who spent some time living with Joseph and Emma Smith. And he said that, he saw Joseph, that he was a human. He was a very good man, but he had his human traits. And he said afterwards, I thank God that I was able to see that because it gave hope to me that I could someday amount to something, which he obviously did, becoming president of the church. But if we put these people on pedestals, then they become something altogether different. And you think, well, they're irrelevant to me. I can never be that.
And in some ways, I think there's a trap of being like, oh, well, that's so inspirational. Like, he was perfect. That's so inspirational. We can look up to him. But in my experience, I found so much more fulfillment and inspiration from actually diving deep and getting into the nitty-gritty of these people's lives to know them as a human, because it's way more impressive for a human to be accomplishing these things than for this godlike creature to be accomplishing these things.
If there's some different species, then what's that to me?
Yeah, then how am I supposed to learn from that?
We're willing to do that with the Savior. We're not ever saying that he made mistakes, but we take a lot of comfort in the human experience, the suffering in the garden, where are you, Dad?
Yeah.
And stuff like that, that even Christ wasn't immune to being a human.
There's a passage describing the atonement where it says that Jesus began to be astonished, or astonied, I think the King James says. And I have taken that to mean, maybe I'm wrong, that even he was a little surprised. It's one thing to read about this in the book, to understand the theory of it, but when the agony of the atonement actually comes upon him, it's astonishing.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's worse than he had imagined. I take some comfort in that. It's one of the reasons we have to come to this life is you could read a book about what mortality would be like, but no, you have to experience it. It'll be different than you thought.
And almost every decision that had to be made in that era was there is no easy answer.
And that was one of the things that stood out to me too as I was pondering on the things we've learned about Brigham, it's like his position was just impossible, and he did extraordinary things with it. And I've been very open that there are a lot of things that I wish had happened differently, and so do a lot of people. And I'm sure so does Brigham, like wish that things had unfolded differently. But man, I do not envy that man. Everything that he was navigating, and how can you not make some mistakes when you're dealing with all of that? And despite all of that, seeing just the miraculous work that was able to come forth through Brigham and his faithfulness and the faithfulness of the saints that he led. And it's astounding.
And in the spirit of like humanizing tidbits, I came across one in a book from the memories of one of his daughters.
Is this the parlor story?
It's the parlor.
I love it.
So there's the parlor story, and then I have one other one. So there's a parlor story. So apparently in the Lion House, there was a parlor in which the oldest of the kids, of the 50 some odd kids, they were called the Big Ten, apparently, by the other children. So the Big Ten had permission to invite their courtiers, their suitors, their beaux to come to that parlor. That's the place where they were allowed to, spend time in the evening, what have you. And the story is, at one point, the kids were kind of like, man, there's a lot of people in here. I'm trying to have my private time with my significant other. And so they decided that they'd build a barricade around the main lamp on the center table. With books, so that it just kind of shot a little like restaurant glow up at the top. And so they feel really proud of themselves and each go to their own corner of the room and canoodle, who knows, right, kind of thing. And a couple of moments later, the door opens and Brigham appears with his long candlestick, which is apparently one of his like signature items, calmly looks around the room and just without saying anything proceeds to destroy the barricade, tells the girls to go upstairs and says, I will be sending your boys home. It's just, I can't imagine, the dread, the existential dread of being one of those suitors like, oh my gosh, I was just getting kind of cozy with Brigham's daughter.
It's such a dad moment, it's like, oh, I just love it. I love it so much.
And from her record, it's really tender because she says it's like, again, not to deify him, but the impact he had on the family was such that the children loved him. Yeah. And she was like, we all felt, how impossible it would be to make 51 children feel uniquely loved. She said, we all did. We all loved Dad.
Brigham Young at home.
Yeah, Brigham Young at home.
I'll say one way that I know Brigham is a prophet is that he prioritized the arts. As an actor myself, that's a sign of truth that he comes to Nauvoo, they build a theater, and they come to Salt Lake and they build a theater. And it's like he was such an advocate for the arts. And I love that in particular, knowing his past, like learning how much that was prohibited in his early years. And just the fact that like when he finally was able to embrace it and discover it to its fullness, he loved it. He loved the arts. He loved the theater, all of that, and he was a supporter of it. He encouraged.
He even acted himself.
Yes, acted in plays himself, and just encouraged people to develop those talents because he recognized the power of sharing stories and the power of music and all of that can bring the spirit in different ways than just preaching.
Again, another facet of that's an impractical thing to do.
Yeah.
That's not going to help people survive. That's not going to keep people alive.
Right.
But it's going to make their life fuller and richer, the same way that temple worship does.
He didn't want to just create a settlement where people had enough food to eat. He wanted to do that, obviously.
Right.
He was trying to create a model society
Thriving.
that would have art, music, drama, all those sorts of things. He really cares about that.
When I look at the whole picture of Brigham, it's so fascinating to see how deliberately he used his life. Right? He was not careless about any of it. From the beginning when he converted to the church, he was careful about that. He was careful even in the things where we maybe judge him for, the relationships with African Americans and with the Native Americans. We assume that he just reacted on a flash judgment. And some of his statements, I think, obviously were quick statements, but you look deeper into it and you see that he is thinking through these and truly trying to find a solution that aligns with his values the best that they can, even if it feels impossible. And you see that in how he's designing this, the cities, and he's taking care with every aspect of his life. And I love that about him.
That's true, to be a man of intention as opposed to reaction.
Yeah.
Well, I loved a line from one of the interviews with Garrett Dirkmaat, where he says once he puts his hand to the plow, he never looks back. He's really committed, and he's committed to the whole program of creating Zion, building temples, all those sorts of things. And that's what he thinks about all the time. It's all in the service of this broader vision, this great vision of the kingdom. That's what he's trying to do. I want to tell another story about Brigham that I heard many years ago, and I don't know where I heard it. And I had to actually go to the tabernacle. We're in St. George, so we went to the tabernacle, and I asked the guide there if he could tell me about the story. And to my amazement, he had it in detail and was able to show me how it worked. There was supposedly a dispute between Miles Romney, who was the principal builder of the St. George Tabernacle, and Brigham Young. Again, Brigham Young, the all-powerful tyrant, right?
Right.
But he shows up at the tabernacle one day and discovers that Miles Romney has created a spiral staircase, which is a beautiful piece of work, and I climbed up it today. But it goes up fairly high, and then they were going to build the second floor, the balcony section, at the level that the spiral staircase concludes. Brigham said, "That's too high. They won't be able to see the pulpit from up here. It's too high. The chandeliers will be in the way." So they have a dispute. Brigham wins this one. But if you go to the tabernacle today, you will see something really interesting. You go up the spiral staircase, and then you step down to the balcony, because that's where Brigham Young wanted the balcony. And then the pulpit is down fairly low. But again, people feel free to give him advice, counsel. He may reject it. And in some cases like this one, he insists, and he was right to insist. It would have been too high. And you couldn't just cut the spiral staircase down, because Miles Romney has put a lot of effort into calculating the number of steps and having it come out the right way at the top. If you just chop off the last 3 feet, you're going to be facing into the wall or something like that. So they worked out a compromise. And it's kind of a funny one. Unless it's explained to you, you'll just think, well, it's kind of odd, walked up and then came down. But there's a reason for it. Brigham did have his hand in a lot of things. He was hands-on here in St. George. It's one of the reasons he wanted to be here. It was important to him to get that tabernacle built and to get the temple built, and he wanted them done to high-quality standards. This was going to be part of his legacy. Yeah. And people could disagree with him and say so to his face. Edwin Woolley, I think, and Brigham Young often went back and forth. And at one point, Brigham makes a decision. Edwin Woolley, who's a bishop, which in those days there weren't very many of, who's a very powerful individual in the church. And Brigham says, "Well, I suppose, Brother Woolley, you're going to apostatize now." And Edwin Woolley responds, "Well, Brigham, if it were your church, I would, but it's not your church." And, that's not the way you speak back to the tyrant.
Right.
And I'd imagine, in a way, it was a good-natured sort of banter.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be understood about him.
This harkens back to doing 6 Days in August, and I shared this when we did the fireside for this project, but I'm not a Brigham Young scholar. It's been really amazing to get to do this thing and to go on this journey to hear from the scholars and to have essentially a crash course in church history, more or less. But the unique opportunity of getting to be an actor trying to portray a real person is the attempt to try to understand them as best as you can and to put yourself out of the way. And the prayer in my heart, at least, especially when it has to do with like a religious thing that you believe is important, things like that, the prayer in my heart constantly over the course of the project was, please help me not to mess this up. Please. I am what I am. I only have the tools that I have. Give me the strength and the ability to attempt to do this justice, right, in a way. And it just provided a personal spiritual experience, but a unique one where I do feel like I got to know him in a strange sort of emotional way over the course of going through the events in the film. And the testimony that I walked away with was just a powerful and overwhelming joy in the feeling and the knowledge that the absolute delight of Brigham Young's heart was to follow the Lord. Yeah. That was him.
Yeah.
In spite of himself, in spite of his sharp tongue, in spite of everything, the delight, the drive, everything, I truly believe was anchored infallibly in that desire to follow God and to execute on whatever it was excellently.
I love that. And I think it's been, I didn't play Brigham, but this project has been so fascinating. And in many ways, I'm grateful that Brigham is as complicated as he is, right? It'd be interesting to learn about him if he was this just perfect, easy to understand dude. But I have gotten so much more through wrestling with it. And through it all, I'm grateful for the things he did. And it's been incredible to see his devotion to God, his devotion to Joseph, his devotion to the saints, to those in his life that he loved and cared for. And so 225 years after he was born, this would have been his 225th birthday.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we get to be here in one of his homes, learning about
to have
him.
a donut with maple syrup
Yeah.
in honor of the man
In honor of Brigham.
who, in spite of being a fallible human being, put himself in a position to be God's tool to lay the foundation for all of this.
I'm just grateful that we have a man who was, yes, gifted in practical matters, but put that all in the service of something more important than that. To me, that's really important. He devoted his life to building the kingdom, constructing temples, settling the saints, gathering them. That's what his life was about. And so I'm grateful for that, and I say, well, happy birthday, Brother Brigham.
Happy birthday, Brother Brigham.